Hey everyone, welcome. This is Carla Schill from WhatCounts. We're going to go ahead and get started here in just a minute. I know that we've got some folks already logged in. Of course, want to give everybody a chance to get settled and get logged into the webinar. So we're going to get started right at the hour. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is Carla Schill from WhatCounts. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to walk you through a step-by-step guide to re-engaging your dormant or inactive subscribers through the WhatCounts platform. So we're going to take you through some best practices, things that you should and should not do as you're building your re-engagement campaign. And then at the end, we will do a demo of our automation feature and show you how to build out your own automation campaign. So a few housekeeping tasks that want to get out of the way to start. If you have any questions as we're going through the webinar, please feel free to type those into the chat box in your control panel. I have a colleague here who is assisting, and if it's a question that we can answer for you during the webinar, we'll be happy to do that. Of course, if you have any specific questions about how to build an engagement campaign for your business needs, you'll want to reach out to your technical account manager or your customer success manager to get some assistance with that. But again, feel free to type questions into the chat box and we will answer those as we're going along. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. We are recording today's webinar. We'll share that with everyone who's attended after today's call. And we're also going to have some training available, some on-demand training that we're working to get into place. And we'll share that with everyone as well. That is going to be related to the re-engagement campaign. So look for those things to come to you shortly. All right. So I am Carla Schill. I'm the onboarding manager for WhatCounts. I may have worked with some of you at one time or another as you are getting settled onto the WhatCounts platform. So I am responsible for getting all of our new clients that are new to WhatCounts, getting them up and running and trained on the aspects of our platform, and basically getting them ready to send email. So if I've worked with some of you before, welcome. Appreciate you joining us today. So what is a re-engagement campaign? So we're going to start with defining that. So essentially, this just means that we are building a campaign to target subscribers on your email lists that have become dormant. And by that, we mean they are no longer opening or clicking on your email messages. So we want to try to re-engage those folks and give them some sort of incentive to open your messages. So building that re-engagement campaign, we of course want to determine which email addresses can stay and which of those we need to remove from our email program. So these are just some examples of some re-engagement campaigns that our agency team found. some examples that we thought looked really great. True Citrus is actually a client of WhatCounts, and this is one that we helped them to build out. But some of these others are just ones that we thought were really fun and had a great call to action, and were just a really great way to try and re-engage those subscribers who've gone dormant. So we, of course, have a full service agency team here in WhatCounts. So if it's something that you're interested in and having them help you in building a re-engagement campaign, we can certainly do that. But these are just some interesting ones that we found that we thought were really neat. So why do we run a re-engagement campaign? So we know that it's to, find out who specifically on our list can stay and who needs to go. So who is not engaging with our campaigns. But we found that 25% of your typical marketer's subscriber list will go dormant. So, of course, this number can be higher, could be lower, depending on your business specifically. But obviously, to determine that, we want to dive into your data. And of course, WhatCounts, our platform, allows you to do that, allows you to see those metrics and see specifically who is opening or not opening, as it were, your messages. So really delving into your data to determine who needs to be a part of that re-engagement campaign. So a couple of reasons why we don't want to have those addresses on your subscriber list. One, it can over time cause issues between your email program and the ISPs. So when we say ISP, we're referring to Google, Yahoo, those sorts of guys who are an ISP, and those are sometimes potentially landing you on a blacklist. So if you have addresses on your list that are not engaging with your messages or not opening them, they're going to spam, the subscriber is not engaging, the ISPs are privy to that and are watching that. And so over time, if you continue to mail those same subscribers who aren't engaging, it's going to affect your sending reputation with the ISPs. So not just a bad address that may not exist, but they're also paying attention to those that aren't engaging with your messages. So just another reason to get those guys off of your list. So some general best practices that we recommend for your re-engagement. When you're going back and delving into that data, your subscriber data, you want to focus on subscribers who have been dormant for at least 90 days. So, of course, our platform, and we'll talk about this in a bit, allows you to create segmentation rules. So we can create a segmentation rule that allows us to go back and see that someone is or is not opening and clicking on our messages. So when you're delving into that, you want to focus on that 90-day threshold and going back that far. You also want to focus on your subject lines when you're sending those re-engagements, when you're building your template and building out your creative content. You really want to place a lot of emphasis and put a lot of thought into your subject line. So an incentive in the subject line or language like "we miss you" is going to perform well. So something that's going to encourage them to open that message. You also want to include very compelling and interactive content. So we don't want to just sort of blast them information. We want to ask for their opinions. We want to maybe gather some preferences. So we can do that with a preference site. WhatCounts does support that feature as well. So having a preference site that template links to, or that campaign is linked to try to get them to give you some information. What are their interests? What are they interested in receiving from you to try to get them to re-engage? And then you also want to make sure that your calls to action follow best practices. So one, we want to code those into the HTML, and we want to make sure when we reference here the alt text, that essentially just means that your call to action is not an image. So we don't want the email recipient to have their images turned on with their email client or within their email client in order to be able to see that call to action. So our agency and our marketing team have put together a white paper on re-engagement. All of you who are listening today and attending today's webinar are going to receive a copy of that. So the white paper really dives a bit deeper into best practices when you're building a re-engagement. So cleaning up your list. So once a subscriber that you've targeted who has gone dormant, once they engage with an email, we want to move them back onto your active list. So we're going to see this a bit later on when we do the demo of our automation feature. I'm going to show you specifically how we would send an email, and then we're going to check for an open and click. We want to make sure that they're engaging. And then based on that, that might determine if we send them additional content or if we remove them from our list altogether. Or in this case, if they do engage, we're going to move them to a separate list. So if they reach the end of our re-engagement campaign, so if we've sent them a number of different messages, we're checking to see if they've opened and clicked and engaged with that campaign. If they don't do that after a period of time, might be best to remove them. So whether they've lost interest, they're no longer interested in the content, the address is bad, so we may have a bad email address, it's no longer being used, so the mailbox is no longer active. Their presence in your list is really not favorable to you. So we want to get those addresses out. So we took our own advice and decided to run our own re-engagement campaign using the WhatCounts marketing newsletter list. So these are folks who have signed up to receive the WhatCounts newsletter, our monthly newsletter. So we had about 65,000 addresses on that list and found that our engagement numbers were pretty low. So we ran some segmentation. We placed that list into two different segments. So we had active and inactive. Active we defined as those subscribers who had opened or clicked on a newsletter campaign in the last 90 days. And then inactive, of course, being those people who had not opened or clicked on an email in the last 90 days. So we split those up and created our own re-engagement. And we had some pretty tremendous results. So we had a 181% increase in overall clicks, unique clicks. We had a 62% increase in unique opens. And then one of the great parts here is we had a decrease in opt-outs. So a 31% decrease in opt-outs. So obviously that's one thing we want to focus on too. We obviously don't want to lose those subscribers. We don't want them unsubscribing and removing themselves if there's something that we can do better as it relates to our content. So we had a 31% increase there. And here at the bottom are just some screenshots of that campaign that we ran. So you'll see that we had a link to a preference site. So we talked a bit about that. Setting up a preference site so they have an opportunity to update their preferences. You can gather a little more information from them. A link to our blog, so they could go directly to our blog and read some helpful information there. And then we also offered an incentive, the one there on the far right, for a chance to win a free template critique. So the preference site, updating their preferences, and then some sort of incentive, whether it's a discount on a purchase, something that's going to encourage them to continue reading your messages. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to do, we have a white paper rather, we are going to do a demo of our automation feature, and we're going to send everyone a copy of our white paper. So this goes pretty in-depth into running a re-engagement campaign, some best practices and things like that you'll want to focus on. And then, of course, our full service agency here within WhatCounts will be happy to help you out with any custom work that you'd like to have done, up to building the re-engagement campaign for you. So not just creating the creative aspects, but we can actually create the entire campaign. So we'll be happy to help you out with that. just reach out to your CSM, your customer success manager or your account manager, or you can also email our support team, support@whatcounts.com, and we can get you to the right folks to get that process started. So again, anyone has questions, please feel free to type those into the chat box. I do have a colleague here who's helping me out with that. But from here, we want to go right into our demo. So I want to demo for you our automation feature. We're going to keep this fairly high level in terms of the demo itself. Of course, if you have questions specifically about your business needs and how you should build your re-engagement based on your business needs, your account manager or agency strategy team will be happy to help you out with that. So we're going to close this out here. And I'm going to bring up, we're going to actually just log into the WhatCounts platform. So I'm sure all of you listening have done this at some point or another. And what we're going to do is actually just walk through an automation campaign that we have built out already and just walk you through some of the specifics there. So to get to our automation builder, we're going to navigate over here to the left. And we're going to choose automation, and then we're going to go down to automation campaigns. So you, of course, can have with our automation builder, you can have as many campaigns running as you need to. They'll all run independently of each other. And you'll notice that there is an active versus inactive option here. So active, of course, means that that campaign is running. So anyone who gets moved into that automation is going to receive messages. It's going to follow whatever flow we've built out there. We can make a campaign inactive as well. And if you decide, at some point you want to make changes to that automation campaign, you want to change the flow, you would need to make the campaign inactive. So we would just mark it inactive and then edit it and then reactivate it once you've made the changes. So we're going to go down here to the one at the very bottom, our win back campaign. This is the automation campaign that we have running. We'll give that just a moment to load. All right. So here on the left are our components. So you'll notice that we have our deploy email option. We have an opportunity to check for opens and clicks. We can do clicked or opened, some wait durations. We can edit subscriptions, move them to another campaign so we can link two automation campaigns together. And then, of course, we have our end option, which just tells us we want to end the particular flow that we've built out here. So I want to just walk you through each of the steps that we've built out here. For you guys, we can get pretty detailed here. We can do opens and clicks. We can wait a period of time, send another email, wait another period of time. We can do some data checks. We can update the subscriber record with things like that. But for this demo, we want to keep it fairly high level and just show you some of the basics of the automation feature. So the first thing we're doing in this particular automation, we of course are deploying an email. So we've run some segmentation already. We've determined who is active versus inactive on our list. And we're specifically going to target those who have not opened our messages over the last 90 days. So we want to try to re-engage them. So the first thing we're doing is a deploy email. And we would just choose our deploy email option here on the left. We would drag that over. I'm going to double click it to open it. And the first thing we're going to define is an email tracking name. So this is a required field, but you'll really want to put a little bit of thought into this so that when you're going back and you're looking at your reporting metrics, you'll be able to identify this particular deployment very easily. So in this particular instance, because we're sending a series of emails in this win-back campaign, we're doing a total of 4 deployments. We're titling our tracking name or defining our tracking name as win-back 1, just to denote this as the first email that's going out. We're then going to choose a template So of course, this is going to assume that you have your creative content already in place and you've built out a template. So whatever creative content the recipient's going to receive. And then with automation, we're creating a list definition. So some of you are probably already familiar with the list definition feature. It is essentially a blueprint for your list. So in this case, we are predefining the from and reply to address that are going to go along with that email deployment. So in other words, what is the subscriber going to see when they receive that message? So you will need to set up a list definition, and that is just here on the left, lists, list definitions. So with automation, we're not using a list and those list attributes. Rather, we're using a list definition. So we would choose our list definition here. And then we're going to select an email phase. So this is winback, and this is a standard phase that we have within our platform. You guys can create your own. You can do something custom if you like. That is set up here under reports and then manage email. And you have options for phases, types, and categories. So you can create your own. But in this case, we're going to use winback since we are doing a winback campaign. And then we're going to define our subject line. So this, of course, is the subject line that the subscriber would see. So whatever you want to have listed here. You can have it notify you when this step is completed. So if you are the administrator, you're logged into the platform here, you're building out this automation campaign, you specifically are going to receive a notification when that first email is deployed. So this is optional, but you do have the opportunity to check that box to have it notify you. So we're deploying that first email, and then we've got to tie this to something. So in this case, I'm sending that first email, and then I want to check and see if there were any opens or clicks. In this case, we're doing after a 7-day period, and I'll show you here. We'll click on this. We don't have to do a wait duration. So we can just proceed immediately. So in other words, we're checking to see if the subscriber opened or clicked that message. If they did, we could have the option here to just proceed immediately. So we don't want to wait for that 7-day period to expire. So you can decide how you'd like to do that, whether it's just an immediate moving through the flow, the subscriber goes on to the next flow that we've built out versus waiting for 7 days. So opened or clicked, and we of course can do opened and clicked. We can do just a click or just an open. So you have a couple of different options there. In this case, we're doing a yes, and if they do open and click it, then we're going to end it. So we're not going to send them an additional message. If after that 7-day period has elapsed, they have not opened or clicked on that message, I'm going to send them a second email. So we're doing a second deployment here. So if we click on this, a lot of the information is going to be the same here. You would want to do a second or a different, rather, tracking name so we can identify that this is the second deployment that's going out. So we've chosen just winback 2 here. And then your template. So as a best practice, you want to have different content. We don't want to just send 4 emails with the exact same content every time. If they're not opening it, we want to try something a little bit different and see if we can get them to engage. So we're choosing a different template here for this second deployment. Of course, your list definition, your phase, and then your subject line. And then we can also choose to have it notify us when that step is completed. So from there, we're doing the same thing that we did for the first deployment. We're checking for an open and click after a 7-day period. So same thing that we did here. If after 7 days they open or click it, we're going to end it and take those subscribers who did engage are going to move out of the automation campaign. If they aren't opening it, we're going to do a third email deployment. And then the same flow here. We're checking again. Did you open or click after 7 days? Yes. We're going to end you, or we're going to end your part in this flow, take you out of the flow. If you didn't engage, again, we have a third, or rather a fourth email deployment that's going to go out. So these are all essentially the same. We're, of course, just choosing a different template. We're doing a different tracking name, again, so we can identify this is the fourth deployment versus our first one. So when we go back and look at our reporting information, we'll be able to distinguish those, and then a different subject line for that deployment. Same thing again, we are checking for opens and clicks. Did you open or click that message after 7 days? If you did, again, we're going to end the automation for those subscribers who did. We're going to take them out of the flow. If you didn't, here's where we're going to remove you from that list. So at this point, those subscribers, we have sent you 4 separate emails with different content, different subject lines, different information, and you're still not opening the message or clicking on the message. So at this point, we really want to get those guys out of our list because they're, again, not doing us any favors. So in this point, or at this point rather, we're going to edit the subscription. So we would pull over our edit subscription option here on the left. I'm going to double click this to open it. And I am going to opt out this subscriber. So I'm choosing opt out, and then I'm choosing the specific list that I'm going to remove them from. So in this case, this was our newsletter list. So I've sent you 4 messages. You haven't opened, you haven't clicked, you haven't engaged with my messages at all. So I'm going to go ahead and remove you from my newsletter list. So I'm not going to send you any additional messages. And then from there, we're going to end the flow. So once you've built out your automation, so we're obviously going to do that first. We'll save it. We would go back to our screen here and actually make it active. And then you can do 2 things. You have 2 different options really to start that automation. We can deploy it manually, just as you would just a regular email campaign, and deploy it from there, or you can schedule it on the calendar. So if you know there's a specific date or time that you want to start that re-engagement, you can schedule it on the calendar. And then, of course, once it's deployed, it will just follow the specific flow that you've built out here in your automation. So this automation specifically is going to dictate how those subscribers move throughout the automation. So I'll walk you through just scheduling that and deploying it manually once you have your automation built out. And we, of course, would just go back once we've saved it. We're going to go back to our automation campaign, and here's where we would just click in the box here and make the campaign active. So we want that to go ahead and start running. So once we've done that, I can go into tasks on the left-hand side. I can deploy the campaign. So if I'm ready to go ahead and start it at this moment, I can go ahead and do a campaign deployment and start it from there. Or I can also choose the calendar option and schedule it to go out in advance. So we're going to start with campaign deployment. So we'll choose our deploy campaign. And the big difference here between just a normal campaign that you might typically do is you're just going to choose your mailing type, and there's going to be a different mailing type here. So we're going to choose automation as our mailing type. And then we're going to choose that campaign from our pull down menu. So you'll see that we have some here that are inactive. We, of course, want to choose, in this instance, we want to choose our win back campaign that's active. And then we're going to choose the list that we're actually going to put into that automation. So in other words, what list is going to become, the subscribers that are on that list are going to become or be placed into that automation campaign that we've built out. So we're going to choose our list from the pull down menu here. So in this case, I know that we're sending to our newsletter list. So we'll choose that. If there's any segmentation that we want to do, in addition, you can certainly do that from here as well. In this case, we recommend as a best practice that you want to just target those who haven't opened and clicked. So you would build that segmentation rule out ahead of time and then test that against a list and determine who specifically on, in this case, your newsletter list has not been engaging. And then those, of course, are the folks that we want to target specifically. And then finally, you can define a campaign name. So this is, again, going to be really helpful when you are going back and looking at your reporting metrics. You'll be able to very easily identify that message. So I'm just going to do win back, or you could do re-engagement, whatever you'd like to place here, just some sort of identifier for you. And then you're going to choose the format for your template. So this refers specifically to your creative content. Are you using both plain text and HTML? So we have a multi-part MIME option. Or are you just using HTML or plain text? So I think for most of us, most of our clients, it's typically just HTML or possibly multi-part MIME. So we're going to choose our format, and then we're going to go over to the next button. And then this is your confirmation. So this is just as if you were deploying a normal campaign. Of course, the only difference here is that we're choosing our mailing type, so automation versus normal. But this is your confirmation. You want to check and make sure you have your list name correct, your from and reply to, your subject line, any segmentation that we're doing, your campaign name, etc. And then you'll be able to also see the number of subscribers that are actually going to receive that automation. So we would just click send from here. That's going to deploy that automation, and anybody who's on our newsletter list is going to get moved into that automation campaign and then would just move through the flow from there. So the other thing we can do, of course, is schedule this on our calendar. So we go back to tasks, calendar. We're going to schedule a campaign deployment. And just as we saw when we did the live deployment there, we would just choose our mailing type as automation. Choose your automation campaign from the pull-down menu. Of course, your list that you're actually going to target, your campaign name, any segmentation that we're doing, in addition to format of your template. The only difference here is that you're choosing a start date and time as to when you want that automation to begin. So you would just make those changes here. All right. So if anybody has any questions about the automation feature, we got through this a bit faster, I think, than expected. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to type those into the chat box in the control panel, and we'll be happy to get those addressed for you. And of course, if it's a question specifically about your business, we can certainly get you in contact with the right folks to have them discuss that with you. But please feel free to ask any questions. All right, guys. So we have a couple questions coming in. I think that Owen has responded to some of you directly through a chat, but there are a handful that have just come in just now. So one question is if you can see a sample of the subject lines used. Yes, we will be happy to share that with you. I believe our white paper goes into that specifically, some example subject lines that you can use for the automation. So we'll be sharing that with everyone who is on the webinar today. So yes, we will be happy to share with you some examples of some great subject lines that you can use for your re-engagement. Okay. So the other question was, is it possible to make a marketing automation campaign search for newly inactive subscribers on a daily scheduled basis? So yes, you can do that. You would just use the calendar to be able to do that. You would not need to launch a new campaign. So you would just essentially just change the frequency down here at the bottom to account for that. But you would not need to launch a new campaign every single time. Okay, and the other question is, are there any recommendations around the amount of days to wait between the different emails in the campaigns? Generally, you would probably want to wait somewhere in the neighborhood of, you can see in our campaign that we ran, we waited 7 days. You could obviously do less than that, or of course, as we saw, we can proceed right away. But generally, yes, you'd want to give them a good, I would say at least 5 to 7 days. Give them an opportunity to read the message and have an opportunity to interact. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 days would be a good recommendation in terms of the amount of time to wait between the different campaigns. And the other question was, do we have any suggestions for emails to send to people that get placed into your inactives list? Ideas on how to get them reengaged? Yes. So our white paper goes into that a little bit. Your account manager or your customer success manager can also help you with that. We can get our agency team, our strategy team to help you with some re-engagement ideas and specifically building out some creative content that's going to get them re-engaged. So yes, we can certainly do that for you. Okay. And yes, you can opt out from more than one list. So that was another question. Can we opt them out from more than one list? So yes, you can do that. We would just build that into the flow. So opting them out of 2 separate lists. And the other question we had was, rather than opting them out at the end of your campaign, would we be able to populate a custom field called inactive? Yes, you absolutely could. So we could set up a custom field under subscribers, custom fields, create a custom field called, status or inactive, whatever you'd like to call it. So yes, if they don't engage, if they're not opening, clicking, you can update. We can do, if we go back to our automation here, I'll show you specifically. We can update a custom field for that subscriber. And then you, of course, can use that for segmentation. So we would do an update data here on the left. We pull that over. We can, if it was a custom field, we would choose custom here. You'd be able to choose the specific field. So we have some, of course, set up here. You would just choose, in this case, your inactive field, and then assign it a value. So whatever value you want it to update with. So yes, you can absolutely build that in, as opposed to opting them out or ending it from here. We could do an update data and have it update the subscriber record, and you'd be able to use that, for segmentation. Okay. So the other question we had was in reference to the question of doing this on a regular daily basis. If selecting the repeat option as repeat daily, would it be likely that the same subscribers would get placed in the automation campaign every day? No. So that's going to really be play a part with your segmentation. So it would depend on how you build out your segmentation rule. In our example and in our automation campaign, we were specifically looking for those who had not engaged in 90 days. So your segmentation rule that you build out is going to play a big part in that. All right, guys, lots of great questions. Thanks for sending those over. I think we got everyone answered. If you have any additional ones, please feel free to type those in the chat box. We've got a little bit of time left. Be happy to answer those for you. Of course, if you have any questions specifically about building an automation for your business needs, do reach out to our support team or your customer success manager, and they can get you moving in the right direction. But we're going to hang out here for a few more minutes. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask those. I appreciate you all joining us. I hope this information was helpful. So we did just get a great question, and we'll go in and look at a segmentation rule. The question was, how do you filter out the active, unengaged users using segmentation? So we actually have one built out here that we'll show you. So I'm going over to segmentation and then segmentation rules. And we have an inactive subscribers here that we've built out. So we'll click on that. And this is the specific rule that we've built out. You, of course, have your standard fields here on the left when you're building segmentation. So these are subscriber-specific fields. If we click on the arrow here to the right, we can do some event type tracking. So are they opening? Are they clicking? Things of that sort. So that's what we've done in this particular rule. And in this case, we're doing a nested rule. So we're doing a tracking event type, not in, and we're checking to make sure that they have not opened a message, they haven't clicked on a URL, they haven't subscribed in the last 90 days. So again, we're targeting specifically those folks who haven't opened in a 90-day period. So tracking event type here at the top, and then we're nesting it and doing a tracking event date, days between today and then greater than 90 days. So this would be the example segmentation you'd want to use. So we can send this out to you guys. We can, I'll include this we can add this into the deck rather, I think, that we just went through. So you guys can just sort of be able to copy this if you want to create your own segmentation. So this is how you would build that out and apply it to, we used our newsletter list. So apply this segmentation, and we can test it right here from the segmentation builder. So our newsletter list, we could test it from here, save and test, and you'll be able to see from here, who those inactive subscribers are. Okay, so please send any additional questions you have. We'll be happy to get those answered for you. All right, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. I think we've got all of our questions addressed. Thank you all so much for listening today. Appreciate all those great questions. Of course, if you have anything else, I'm going to hang out for another minute. Feel free to ask those. We did record today's webinar, so we'll be sending that out to everyone. And do look for that white paper with some best practices coming to you soon. Thanks again.